The rupee is the official currency of India. It is the livelihood of more than 1 billion people using it to exchange goods and services every single day. There are trillions of rupees in circulation and is rapidly growing every single year. In recent years, we have also seen the rupee's usage go from traditional to digital. Fintech companies have introduced this notion of digital currency, which is increasingly becoming popular in India. However, what makes India's rupee stand out is not its use, but rather how its value has been dropping over time. Comparatively to the US dollar, which is its baseline, the rupee has been dropping year over year, decade after decade. Back in the 1970s, the rupee once stood at around 8 rupees to $1, meaning for every dollar you can exchange it for 8 rupees. Nowadays, $1 is worth more than 80 rupees. How can one of the world's future superpowers see its currency value plummet over time? As a matter of fact, a huge portion of this drop was only made recently. In 2019, the rupee to $1 was hovering around 70 rupees to $1. By 2021 and 2022, it continued to rise significantly to 74, 76, and by the end of 2022, to over 82. This brings us to the important question about India's currency: why is it dropping so much, both in history and in recent times? Well, to understand this, it might be important to understand the dynamics of the rupee today. The Reserve Bank of India stands as the country's central bank. The central bank has a direct role in the rupee's value through monetary policy tools and currency interventions. Recently, these have been more evident than any time in history. The RBI has been intervening to stabilize the rupee, ensuring that it doesn't fluctuate too wildly. Such interventions can be through buying or selling US dollars, thereby influencing the rupee's demand and supply. But why does it fluctuate? Well, the reasons are many. In our modern era, the rupee, like many currencies, is heavily influenced by the global landscape. Global events, trading relationships, and even sentiments can sway its standing. To understand further, let us first discuss international trade. India's trade dynamics play a huge role. If India exports more goods and services than it imports, it can lead to a higher demand for the rupee, potentially strengthening it. Conversely, a trade deficit where imports outweigh exports can exert downward pressure on the currency. So where does Indian trade stand? Well, despite being a huge exporter, it's actually negative. Or put it simply, India imports more than it exports. In recent months, India's trade balance has reached over $30 billion in negative. They're importing $30 billion more than they are exporting. Its trade balance has continuously been negative, except for a few instances since the start of the 21st century. However, one should not only see the negative view of having a trade deficit. Sure, it can devalue a currency, but one should also understand that these imports fuel economic growth. Secondly, foreign investments play a role. When foreign investors invest in India, they bring in foreign currency, bolstering the rupee. However, they also make the currency susceptible to global market sentiments. When global investors are bullish about India's economic prospects, they pour money into the Indian markets, propping up the rupee. But any negative sentiment can lead to a quick pullout, weakening the currency. Thirdly, and most importantly, are worldwide economic trends. The US and China have a huge impact on the rupee. For instance, rising US Treasury yields can attract investments away from emerging markets like India, affecting the rupee's standing. These are the most plausible causes for the rupee's recent decline, because the Federal Reserve, which is the US central bank, has been increasing interest rates, thereby influencing asset return. Less investment into India is the result. Now, it is important to know that these are summarized causes for its drop over time. There is no single answer as to why India's rupee has devalued from 8 to 80 rupees to $1. It's a collection of many factors out there and probably many other forces that we have not discussed. But let's leave it at that, and now let us understand how the Indian government, or the RBI for that matter, can influence the value of the rupee. The RBI has many tools to help increase the value of the rupee. The first and most direct way is through the adjustment of interest rates. Just like how the Federal Reserve of the United States has done it, the RBI can increase their own interest rates, thereby attracting more foreign investments. This increased demand for the rupee can strengthen the currency. It's also important to know that lower interest rates can have the opposite effect, but as we have seen, the RBI has indeed increased the interest rate both for the cause of inflation but also for strengthening the local currency. The RBI, since 2022, has increased interest rate from 4% to over 6.5%. Another method the RBI employs is foreign exchange intervention. This involves buying or selling foreign currency, particularly the US dollar, to influence the rupee's value. By purchasing US dollars, the RBI can increase the supply of rupees in the market, potentially decreasing its value. Selling dollars has the opposite effect, reducing the rupee supply and potentially increasing its value. The RBI employs reserve requirements to control the money supply in the economy. By altering the funds banks must hold in reserve, it can affect the rupee's value. Increasing reserves tightens the supply, possibly boosting the rupee's value, and vice versa. Another strategy is open market operations, where the RBI buys or sells government securities. Selling securities contracts the money supply, potentially raising the rupee's value, whereas buying expands it, possibly reducing the rupee's value. And finally, the RBI can relegate capital flows by adjusting restrictions on capital movement. Relaxing these restrictions can invite foreign capital, possibly strengthening the rupee, while tightening them can lead to the opposite effect. Now, before we end the video, let us discuss the answer everyone actually wants to know. Is this bad? Is a devaluing rupee bad? If the RBI can influence the rupee to rise in value, should it do it? But as we have seen, the RBI is not really keen on bringing back the olden days when the rupee was once valued 8 to $1. That's because the current economic scenario is vastly different from the past. A strong currency is not always an indicator of a strong economy. In fact, a moderately valued currency can sometimes be beneficial, especially for a developing economy like India. A lower valued rupee can make Indian exports more competitive in the global market. This is crucial for a country like India, which is striving to expand its export base. Cheaper exports can lead to increased demand for Indian goods, boosting the manufacturing sector and creating employment opportunities. Moreover, a too strong rupee can be detrimental to the inflow of remittances. India is one of the largest recipients of remittances in the world, with a significant portion of its population working abroad. A stronger rupee means less value for the money sent back home, which can impact the livelihood of many families. However, it's also true that a devalued rupee makes imports more expensive. This can lead to inflationary pressures as the cost of imported goods, especially essential items like oil, increases. The RBI thus faces the complex task of balancing these contrasting effects. In conclusion, while a devaluing rupee does present challenges, it is not necessarily a sign of economic weakness. The RBI's management of the currency reflects a nuanced understanding of the broader economic goals, including growth, inflation control, and global competitiveness. The aim is not to revert to historical values, but to find a balance that supports India's diverse economic needs. But anyway, do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.